Good day everyone, it's Career again, and this episode is episode 14, and in the previous episode, which was episode 13 obviously, we made this. This is our combination offshore support vessel, tanker and container ship. And today I'm feeling pretty productive. Today I'm feeling like I'm gonna do something on this. And so there are two big things we can do. We can either make the engine room or the deck and the tanks. The problem with the engine room is that it usually takes a lot of time, especially mining uranium in career world, which I don't even have a vehicle for currently. So I think deck it is. That will also be more fun to see the ship really grow and look better. So today we shall do the tanks, we shall make some piping and make this look better, add some cranes and add some containers. So that will be very interesting, and let's jump into the workbench with that. So first I say we make the piping. We need to make that first to really know what is going to be only cosmetic and what is actually going to be used. So I say we do 3 tanks in the ship, or 3 per side. So 1, 2 and 3 maybe like here, and same on the other side, totaling 6 tanks. That means that we will obviously need 3 hoses per side. So we have this setup. Now let's actually set up the tanks so we know where to route our pipes. From my knowledge of tankers, the tanks actually can't be that big because the ship is just gonna sink. So the thing I'm doing here is quite a bad idea. I need to put the tanks lower in the hull because of stability reasons. So let's just lower them down. Now what I'm doing here is also very stupid. We need to do a double hull so we don't get any leakage. Well done, now that should work. We have a nice catwalk in here and we have the 2 tanks. Let's just stretch this out and move on to the stern more. I will probably make these bow and stern tanks a little bigger than the middle one, just because I have space. Stern tank done, let's make the bow one. This one will be a tiny bit more difficult because we need to work with the curve here. Now that we have everything working, I just quickly connected up all of the tanks together so we can get a reading of how much space there is. We will use a fluid meter. Our capacity is around 600,000 liters, which is a little less than I wanted, but I think that's fine with how much space is taken up by all of this. Maybe we could expand a little more into the stern. My idea with this expansion is that we will move this bit, the last 2 tanks, and we will extend the middle one. And there we go, very cool. Now let's actually find the meter, there it is, and see again. We also can't forget that we will need a big space for ballast tanks. And that's a nice number, I like that, let's keep it as this. But about the ballast tanks, the ship will sit very high out of water and you don't want that in waves, for example. So if there is no load on board, we will need to have ballast tank. Now let's fill the ship up and see how far down does it go. We will use a fluid spawner and we will use diesel. I don't know if certain fluids have different weights. Yeah, so that's 50%. That drags it quite far down. Also, we may need to move this more to the stern because it drags the ship very far down on the bow. Let's do 100% and see if it sinks it completely. That's actually a little better than I expected. Well then, let's move our tanks to the stern more. And I will definitely not extend the middle one anymore, because that's just gonna add more weight. Also, I think this is enough space for us. We will put the reactor here, the boilers here, and so pistons somewhere in here, because the boilers need to be far away from the reactor due to temperature. And cool, that's done. Let's add more pivots and see now. Well, that's a lot of pivots. I might start using the rocket booster buoyancy glitch. Okay, that's better. But yeah, you see, this is what happens if you use the pivot glitch a little too much. That is, the ship just starts like doing weird things. Let's save that. Let's just make a new vehicle real quick and get a rocket booster and see what we can do. So I changed the fuel of this thing to be like minus a lot, and now you need to put it in a high place on your ship, I believe. So let's put it here, merge it, and let's see what it does. Absolutely nothing. I need to learn a little more about this. So yeah, I redid it, and yeah, that's a problem. I'm gonna try putting it very high up in the ship, as I put it really low somewhere in here, this. So I'll try again. It doesn't tip over anymore, but it still does weird things. I am probably going to change that value for the lower. Let me just try to use some diesel in this thing. Set that as 100. That's... I don't even know anymore. Just why. So I used minus 60,000. Looks like that works. Sort of. I think it's possible that the problem is that it needs to be moved a little forward. Let's see. I'm just gonna try and move it closer to the center of gravity, if that does anything. Let's move it just above it. Yeah, that looks way better. That's perfect. Now let's put in some diesel. Yeah, I'm gonna use a value of negative 75,000, let's say, to just make it work a little better. But I like this. This will be a very fun ship to use. So we are now full of diesel and we aren't sinking. So that's very good. I actually haven't checked it out how it works without the diesel. So let's do that real quick. Oh wow. Sits up very high. So we will definitely need a ballast system. But it's starting to remind me of a real tanker, because they do sit up really high. So I added some ballast tanks. I just filled up this space down here, and now it looks very good. The water actually goes like one block below the stern, which is how I envisioned it, so that's very nice. So now let's actually work on the deck things and just that. Then we can work on the pump systems and getting the fuel into the tanks and also getting the ballast in. And then we can do all of the details. So let's now make the pumps and pipes and everything like that. So because we will have a lot of power and RPS produced from our reactor and everything, I will use an impeller pump. Now let's hook them up. Now we are linked to our bow tanks. Let's do the middle ones. We are now connected to our middle tanks. Let's finally do the stern ones. And the good thing about impeller pumps is that I think you can reverse them, and that's just by using a gearbox for the RPS, which means that this will be way easier than using large pumps, for example. Perfect. Now we are connected to everything as far as the fluid goes. Let's do the RPS now. I'm pretty sure we can just connect all of these at once and bring it into the engine room and work on that in the next episode, as we will need a source of power for that. So we now have this. Let's just get the gearbox in. So the piping is done. Let's move on to all the logic. And we will need to change up the piping again, just a tiny bit. So we now have some clutches and some gearboxes. I replaced that gearbox. Now let's make the logic. So let's put in some instrument panels. We will have an engage button and a flow out button, or basically a reverse. Now here we will have indicators to indicate if we are pumping in or out. Let's get a composite microcontroller and go, I guess, into the bowl. I think this is a good place to place our logic. And let's switch this up a little bit. Let's delete these and add another composite node, this time an output. So now let's make a time lapse of making this thing work. So we now have a really quick microcontroller. Let's hook it up. And so now we have it set up. Let's do infinite electric, and our motor is not running because I forgot to hook it up. So I just quickly labeled some things. Now we are ready for testing. Our motor is running and we should be getting quite a lot of RPS. Yes, 59. Now we can see that we are pumping in. If we do out, it's gonna be reverse. Can engage. Now let's see how quick we can pump out this tank. Well, it doesn't seem to be working. Why is that so? So I now know why exactly it didn't work. Basically I put it the wrong way. This is in, this is out. And that also tells me that we can't reverse it. So we will need another pump and somehow get a clutch switch system, which will be easy but quite repetitive doing it with all of these. Also, I just found out large fluid pumps are way better than large impeller pumps. Even if you use like 400 RPS, it's still gonna be very low. It's still gonna pump less than 30 liters per second, which is horrible. So we are just going to use large fluid pumps. So I replaced the pumps and it should now very much work. So let's put in the hose, engage, and it's pumping in at a speed of 37 liters per second. And now when we want to get the fluid out, we can just do flow out. And it will flow out, which is absolutely perfect for me. It's rather slow, but apparently with Stormworks there's a limit from what I can see. Do not take this as for certain. I may be doing this wrong, but there might just be a limit. So now let's add some decorations, such as like pipes and stuff like that. So we now have details, and from this whole thing I learned two things, and the first one is that I'm actually not that horrible at building tankers, and that it's been a long while since I've built a ship that actually has a railing on this deck. Or basically I've built a lot of ships that have their superstructure on their whole length. But now you may notice that the ship feels a little flat and plain still, even though there are these decorations. And that's because in the last episode we didn't only say this was gonna be a tanker, we also said it was going to be a container ship. So let's add a place where we can put like 9 containers on top of this thing. So we now have a place to put our containers, and the ship looks way less flat and plain. But now the only thing that's left is to add our cranes. But before we do that, I also want to add some kind of a wall at the bow to kind of protect the containers from waves and just to make it look a little better. But now let's start. So first let's make the wall bit. If I find any pictures I will try to put them on the screen right now, but container ships usually have this. Is this good? I don't know. This might be better actually. Or we can just cover over the whole bow fully. We can definitely try. Yeah, that doesn't really look good, does it? Then what do we do with this? Is that what we do with it? I don't know. Let me try add something to it. Because at this moment it looks a little too blocky. Yeah, I think that's what we do with it. I think that looks quite cool. From here it looks quite good, but from the back side it looks like it's bent. So let's add some supports. I think this looks the best. No, this looks the best. I set those supports a little more in, and this looks better. That's a little bit of variation to it. Yeah, makes it look better. Now let's finally start off with those cranes. So we want there to be 2. And we want them on the port side, because that's which side we will usually use for docking. And so we will put one here and one here, and their arms will be like linked in here, so like a geared bulk carrier. We'll show a picture on screen right now. So now let's hit the time lapse and do it. And so our crane is done, and we can even extend and retract our arm, which is really cool. Now, as I expected, there's a problem, and so basically they don't fit here. So I'll just modify it real quick. And so we're done. We have 2 cranes, and that's cool. Let's check out if this one has any issues. Doesn't seem like it does. Now I'm gonna add some weight in here, and I'm gonna try to pick up a container if that's actually possible. Oh yeah, guess I'll not do that, because I forgot that Stormworks docks are incredibly unrealistically tall. So yeah. Now the only thing left to answer is which one has better cranes? This one or this one? By the way, this is a really old ship of mine, and I obviously think that these cranes are way better than these. But what do you think? But that's the end of the video, and in the next one we will probably do the reactor and everything like that. And so see ya. Oh, you're still here. Well then, in the last video where I showed off the new name, I also showed that I am building a lake freighter. Well, that's how it looks now. Very much way different from what it was in the last video, and I really like it. But now that really is the end of the video, so see ya.